Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the series premiere of Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. Great series premiere. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So, obviously, this show has shifted a lot from what it was initially. This show was initially created for the purposes of being kind of a prequel to the MCU Spider-Man situation. It's supposed to be like, oh, this is Peter's freshman year before the events of like Civil War and all that happened. But now it's like, it eventually shifted to be like, no, it's its own thing. It's kind of almost like an alternate universe take on like that storyline. Because heroes exist in this continuity. I'm curious what the time frame is. Because Civil War happens like, it's around 2016 when Civil War happens. Not only just real life wise when the movie came out, but also in inside the continuity of the MCU was 2016, I believe, and 2016, 2017, something like that. And Doctor Strange came out like November of like 2016, so that's why when Peter saw Doctor Strange, he's like, it's some wizard guy. I was like, oh, interesting. I was like, I guess it means like Doctor. At first I was wondering, I'm like, is this Doctor Strange from another universe popping into this universe? So I'm wondering, is there not a Doctor Strange in this universe yet? Or maybe there isn't a Doctor Strange at all in this universe. Be interesting if that ended up being the case, considering like you have like that what if situation in season 2. Spoilers for what if, where basically Strange kind of wiped himself out of existence in that universe. He technically exists, as we kind of learn in season 3, but like no one remembers him. No, it would be like he never existed. I wonder if there's kind of a similar thing in this. Not in that regard, but just like I said, that there was no Doctor Strange in this universe, or is he from this universe? He's just not a mainstay commodity because he's dealing with so much like cosmic and magical stuff that no one knows him yet because he's still early on and in his career as Doctor Strange. Obviously, we're also keeping up with like the MCU continuity of Uncle Ben is gone. So I'm curious, will this cover at all how Uncle Ben died? But it's just like he's gone now, and you know Pete's telling May like, yo, I'm very appreciate you after everything we've been through, losing Ben. Like I'm grateful for everything that you've done for me. And I was like, oh, that's really sweet. And then obviously he's getting excited. All right, it's going to be orientation day. And lo and behold, stuff pops off. I knew, once again, they're trying to distinguish this being like, yo, we're balls to the wall immediately because a portal opens up and a symbiote, or symbiote, if you want to go down route, ends up popping out. I was like, wasn't expecting it because I remember like some people talking about like scenes that were shown from this, like at like D23 and stuff. But it has been so long, that to be the inciting incident, and then Doctor Strange shows up to fight this thing, which I love that whole sequence, and obviously utilizing his powers. He's like, yeah, you're not going to get through the shield. Oh wait, you're getting through the shield. I'm never using this spell again. And then him doing that Inception thing of like turning the skull sideways, having his cape save that kid. I love that. And even when the symbiote threw that truck, he tried to rewind time. So, I wonder they're gonna say like I wonder they're gonna keep it in line where like he has the time stone in his continuity, or we just gonna do our own thing where it's like, no, he doesn't have the time stone. That's just part of his magic to turn back time. It looked greenish, so it does seem like he probably does have. He would have the time stone at this point in time inside the Eye of Agamotto, you know. So once again, it's gonna be pulling a lot from like probably stuff from the comics, but also like it is probably going to pull some elements and things from the MCU's continuity, just probably twisting, you know, to some degree. But yeah. Also, we had Pete meeting Nico, which I knew that she was in the show. I wasn't expecting him to meet under those circumstances. And also, they kind of go, if it's been a while since I saw Into the Spider-Verse, but isn't that how Miles got his powers? Like it was a spider from a different dimension, wasn't it? I don't think it was a spider from that. Maybe I'm mistaken. Like I said, I've seen it once all the way through in theater, so I haven't seen it since like 2018. I've seen bits and pieces here and there. To my recollection, maybe I have seen it more recently than I'm remembering. But either way, I think that thing happened with Miles, didn't it? Like his spider was from a different universe. But either way, that's where Peter's spider comes into place. So I'm curious what universe that's from, and that's why I was also like, is this Doctor Strange from another universe or not? Or is he from this universe? You know, that's going to be interesting. Because he was looking around, he was like, ooh, we're not supposed to be here. Because I guess he knows, like, it's like, maybe he knows Peter's story of, like, oh, we're not supposed to be here. Or maybe he's like, oh, things are kind of different. We're in a different dimension. Maybe he thought he was in his own. I don't know. We'll probably have to wait to get more clarity on that. But yeah, Peter gets bitten and passes out. We do see that the spider crawls on someone else's bag. Because typically the spider ends up being dead, but I was trying to remember, like, aren't there continuities where that spider does go bite someone else? I swear, is it one of the Spider Women or something? I do correct me. Once again, I'm not the comic book dude. I'm not well versed in comics. But I swear, I feel like I vaguely remember there's someone else that gets bitten by the same spider that bites Peter. And I want to say it's one of the Spider Women, but maybe it's someone else entirely. It's not Miles, is it? I don't think Miles gets bitten by the same spider that bit Peter in some continuity. I don't think that's the case. But I feel like I vaguely remember. But like I said, we see it's not dead. It literally crawls on someone else's back. So we might have another spider person out there who's just keeping it low key. But we time skip a couple months, and Peter's been doing this for a while. I really like how they really lean into, like, this. I mean, obviously he's going to have this homemade suit for a while. But even just like the whole, like, adjusting the pressure, I feel like I've never seen anything really tackle that. Like his whole getup for this, how it's just kind of like like he actually has, like, we're seeing him adjusting the pressure of, like, you know, like of the webbing and stuff. I mean, I guess that's what he's doing when he's adjusting, like, that tank and valve on his back. I mean, once again, just see Peter swing throughout the city, just having fun. And then also saving Harry's life from one of the people. They were like, yo, Stevie Herman. And I was like, Herman? As in, like, Shocker? I was like, oh. It seems like we'll talk about this more later, too. It seems like they're going to make a lot of his villains, maybe not a lot of them, but maybe some of his more well-known. I mean, you know, Spider-Man has, like, considerably, him and Batman have, like, the most well-known and best rogues gallery. But it seems like maybe they're going to make quite a bit of his rogues gallery his contemporaries. And I feel like there's only a handful of situations I've seen them do that for. And usually it's been in the case of Venom. Specifically, like, Peter and Eddie's relationship. Like, there's the Ultimate Spider-Man video game, and there's also Spectacular Spider-Man, which make it so that Eddie and Peter were like, they were like best friends or buds, and like almost like brothers in some cases. So it's always, once again, it's always that interesting thing of, like, that dynamic of knowing, like, oh, here's this person in Peter's life who's going to, you know, eventually go down the route that they will inevitably go down. I will get to that, like I said, later on with another character, but I'm curious who those other people were. Like I said, I could be mistaken, but I'm pretty sure that guy, like his name was like Steve Harmon or Herman or something like that. I was like, isn't it? I'm pretty sure that's Shocker's name, if I'm not mistaken. So never mind, I looked it up. His name is Herman, but it's his first name. It's Herman Schultz. Not unless they changed it for this, but I was like, I think I was completely mistaken. But there was another character, like I said, later on, but that kind of fits what I was saying. But either way, we also get introduced to Peter's crush, Pearl, which is a character I'm not familiar with. My only experience with Peter's love interests typically have been, like, obviously Felicia, well, MJ, Felicia, and Gwen. Is it Betty? I know that's a thing that doesn't always happen. Liz, I don't know if that was just for the MCU or if that's a character from the comics as well. But I'm not familiar with Pearl at all. So I was like, oh, that's interesting. I think they're kind of going down the Homecoming route where it's like maybe, you know, an MJ will eventually transfer to the school type of situation. So I don't know. We'll see. But because I think of, like, Spectacular Spider-Man, you start off with Gwen and eventually MJ transferred to the school, if I remember correctly. It's been a minute. But yeah, like, she was his babysitter, and it is kind of that thing of, like, I love his excuse. I'm like, no, we hung out, and Nico's like, oh, wait, was she your babysitter? He was like, no. Did they pay her? Yes. And it's like, yeah, I was 11 and a half and she was 14. But he's like, she's like, he wants to be like, I don't want to just be Petey Parker in front of her anymore. I want to show her like, yeah, I like her. So I said, yeah, I'm gonna ask her out. Maybe after school. Maybe by the end of the week. And he goes like, you better jump on that before someone else does. And he's like, ha ha, funny, Nico. Wait, you are joking, right? And I was like, oh yeah, Nico is bi or gay. I wonder if she traditionally bi or gay in the comics. Because I'm my only introduction to my knowing about Nico is only through the Runaways TV show. Because I can't. It's been a hot minute. I'm like, I know her and Carolina ended up together, but I can't remember if her and Alex ever dated. I know like Alex liked her. I don't remember if they ever actually dated though. So that's why I'm like, I don't remember if she's like bi or whether she's gay. Either way, she's taking an interest in Pearl, and I love later on when Peter finally musters up the courage because he goes out, he saves the day. I wonder if that's because I haven't seen Civil War in a minute. It's been a while since I rewatched it. That sequence where like that van is speeding towards the bus, I was like, didn't Peter deal with a situation very similarly to that? Like the video that Tony shows Peter, it's like, oh look, I saw what you did. Like, yo, this is you, right? So I believe it was something similar. It might not be the exact same thing. That's why I'm wondering if that sequence is supposed to be like a wink and nod to Civil War in that regard. But he was so proud of himself, and he gets all this attention. He's like, yeah, thank you. I'm your friendly neighborhood spider. Yeah, I'm gonna take off. It's dope. This is awesome. And he tries to muster up the courage, but by the time he tries to ask Pearl out, Lonnie's already asked her out. And I love Nico being like, I know, buddy. I was hoping it was going to be one of us. I was like, so you really were going to try and go after her, Nico? That's actually kind of messed up, considering you know your bud is super into her. But just like, one of us got to take our shot. Well, I guess it didn't work out for either one of us. I was like, I love that. I wonder if... I'm curious to see if Nico's going to fill the role of kind of a Ned in this, which I think is kind of interesting. I mean, especially considering, like, well, because of Runaways, I know Nico is, becomes a hero in her own right. So I wonder if that's going to be interesting. I wonder if she's going to be his woman in the chair or whatever. But it would like what that dynamic and friendship is going to be like. It's interesting too, considering like we don't know if the MCU will ever go this route, but we like there's the talks about, well, considering like it's that whole conversation about your friends and becoming enemies and stuff. It's like, well, Ned becomes like, apparently I didn't know this. This has just always been that thing of people wondering like, will the MCU ever go down a route that Ned could become the Hobgoblin? I don't know if they'll go down that route or not. So it's kind of interesting where it's like, hey, you have your best friend who could potentially turn villain if the story wanted it to go down that route. But you have your friend who's like, no, she's just a straight up superhero. So I don't know. Just think that's kind of interesting. And, just kind of like twisting that a little bit with making that change. But Peter's like been complaining about it for a week. And I love that, like, he wants to use this as an opportunity. Like, oh, I could be lab partners with Pearl. Then she could see how awesome I am. But then Lonnie wants to be lab partners with her. Which I was like, I kept thinking Lonnie's voice sounded familiar. And it's Eugene Bird. I was like, oh. I'm trying to remember if, like, was 8 Mile... I think he was in 8 Mile, right? I think that might have been the first thing I ever saw him in. Like, the thing that immediately comes to mind is, like, Bones, because he had a pretty recurring role throughout Bones. But either way, I kept thinking to myself, I was like, the name Lonnie Lincoln sounds so familiar. It's like, is he who I think he is? Looked it up. It's like, yeah, he's Tombstone. So I was like, interesting. Like I said, making his villains his contemporaries is kind of interesting. Making them around the same age. Because, like, I don't think I've ever come across a version where Tombstone and Peter are about the same age. Usually Tombstone's older. So, but it turns out, hey, Lonnie's not a bad guy. He's a really good guy. Hey, he's not like, because I was wondering, like, because I was like, oh, is that supposed to be Flash? It's like, no, it's Lonnie. So I wonder, is Flash not either at this school yet, or him and Peter haven't interacted? They might not, just to kind of separate themselves, they might not include Flash. But like I said, the whole element of treating this kind of like how Spectacular Spider-Man treated the Eddie situation of like, yeah, here's sadly a villain in the making. And it seems like they're really going to lean into Lonnie's story to make you sympathetic, because it seems like, you see some massive racial profiling in this. And it's like, it seems like he comes from a not great neighborhood, but he comes from a good family, and he wants to do whatever he can to help out his family and make it so that they are taken care of. And that's what Pete's kind of stuck, where he's like, I like Pearl, but also Lonnie's actually a good guy. We actually like a lot of the same bands. And Nico's adding it to us. Like, oh, I'm just adding this to the list of stuff about, what makes Lonnie great versus you. We all need friends that could poke fun of us and kind of bust our balls a little bit, right? But it's meant, I think, to lean into the tragedy of like what the future is going on. Like it's going to be a thing of he's going to probably break bad for different reasons, because it's just like, once again, the way he's just like, hey, looking at that kid on the was it the trainer of the bus, and that woman just kind of like, come on, honey, and then that cop like, like dogging him down. Like I said, you see like his neighborhood's kind of from a rougher end, so I'm sure that's also going to play into probably like some complicated stuff between Peter and especially because the way they set this up early on, where Peter helps that girl, like she robbed that store, but it's like, yeah, she was down on her luck, and Pete's like, can you just kind of let this go? She was just down on her luck. She made a bad choice that shouldn't define her. And you're like, interesting. Once again, we don't know, even in the MCU, and I'm curious if we'll get it in this, how Uncle Ben died. Peter wasn't Spider-Man yet. He doesn't get his powers until after Ben died. It seems like that's kind of the case in the MCU as well. But it's like, maybe that's also why he helped Nico. Could be a thing of, I didn't help someone when I could have, and maybe that's what made him decide like to help Nico. So even though because May ultimately gives their great power, great responsibility in the MCU. We'll see if that ends up happening in this case as well. But the fact is that I was curious, like, if that lady who robbed that store, I was like, oh, is she going to come back storyline wise? Like, is she going to be like kind of like the guy that ultimately killed Ben is because Peter didn't stop him, and that guy later on comes back and kills Ben? I was wondering if something similar was going to happen, but now I'm like, oh, because of Lonnie's storyline, I think that's what that's going to be set up for. It's like you're going to see Lonnie go down the bad route, and it's like you're going to be torn of like, he did something bad, but you also know the good-natured person that he is, and you'll probably learn more about Lonnie. I mean, or maybe it's going to be a situation of you don't realize it's Lonnie because maybe he's in a mask or something, and then you find out afterwards, and you're going to be torn between like, yo, I know Lonnie's kind of this good guy, but he's done some bad stuff. Should I tell Pearl? And if he does do that, like he actually does like Lonnie, despite his conflicted feelings of, oh, you're with the girl I've had a crush on for like ever. So that's going to be interesting to like dive into that going forward. Like it feels like we are setting the stage for that. So I'm curious to see where things kind of go on that front. And speaking of Civil War, as I've kind of mentioned time and time again, we kind of get a different take on that scene where Peter shows up and he's introduced to Norman, obviously played by Coleman Domingo. I'm like, oh man, I love hearing Coleman's voice, dude. I was like, hell yeah. I was like, oh, that's so dope. But yeah, like obviously giving off that sinister look is going to be a very different. I'm curious to see how much of a different interaction it is versus the one Peter has with Tony in the MCU. So that's going to be interesting and see the direction that goes. Especially because I'm curious to see what this Norman situation looks like in this continuity. Like I could definitely see it very much like. The one that immediately comes to mind is like the Spectacular Spider-Man Norman situation, because like there was a similar dynamic where like, I guess it depends on the continuity, like Peter's relationship with Norman, and in this case, once again, it's going to be that mentorship role. Once again, he's going to fill that Tony spot in his life, so it's going to be interesting to see like how many villains Norman's going to be responsible for making. Because once again, I don't know how much stuff is like just specific to Spectacular, or versus how much Norman is involved with birthing so many villains in Marvel. In the comics specifically. So like I said, kind of a great start to this. It just Spider-Man's my favorite superhero, so I'm so excited to have another animated series. I haven't watched one. The last one I probably watched was like Ultimate, and I never finished it. I need to circle back to that. I was like partway through season 3. But yeah, like I'd love to see where this goes. I've watched the trailer. The trailer mainly covered stuff kind of from this episode, and maybe there's some other stuff. I don't think I ever saw the trailer all the way through because I didn't want to know too much, but I kind of don't know where things are fully going to go. Once again, it is a matter of, well, we know what the future holds. It's just a matter of, well, how do we get there? Like the Marvel Spider-Man game, which is like, I guess you could get like Spider-Man 2018 or PS4, however you want to title it, where it's like, oh, it's Doc Ock in this. Well, when is he going to break bad and become Doc Ock? When is Norman Osborn going to become Green Goblin? It's that type of thing. I kind of forgot about it. It's like, obviously they have a close relationship. Well, I mean, once again, Peter typically does have a relationship with Norman because of Harry and stuff. So I'm sure that's all. I'm curious. Well, I'm wondering, is Norman going to know that he's Spider-Man in this continuity? The fact that he came to Peter, and since he is filling that Tony Stark role, but because obviously he got introduced to Harry when he saved Harry, but it's like, not unless it's a situation of, because I think it's interesting because it seems like Harry doesn't go to the same school as Peter. They typically do, so maybe he just goes to a different school, or maybe he's going to be transferring there, and maybe Norman's taking interest in Peter because he's such a smart kid, or it could just be a thing of like he does fill the Tony role of, oh, I know you're Spider-Man. So we'll see where things kind of go from there. But like I said, I'm very, very excited to see where this series continues to go. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about today. Next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.